Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Smart Money Show. My name is Naman Akhtar and as usual I'm joined by Ali Suleiman. How are things?
I'm good, bro. I'm great. It's been a very long time. It feels like that we've done an online episode to be sat in these tables, and what that basically means is we've had some really great in-person episodes, and obviously we haven't even sat down for an online episodes in 2026. So we haven't seen each other for a year. Is basically the way we think about it. No, but it's been great. It's been busy for sure. It's exam season for us both right now, but I'm feeling good. How about yourself?
Yeah, just great of course. I've got exam on Friday, so exam season, that whole topic is hitting close to home.
Yeah, I've got an assignment due in about 45 minutes as well, so I need to I need to finish that off.
Amazing, and it's nice to be where it all started. Like we started in these seats, filming our first episode of the Dumb Money, then of course that's evolved onto the Smart Money Show. So it's amazing, and I think you know we've got a guest on as well that really I found on the podcast and like you guys probably would have already seen on LinkedIn, and it is just really amazing. So who do we have on today then?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm very excited to say that today we are joined by Chloe Shepherd. So a bit of an introduction on Chloe. Chloe is a credit repo trader who has worked at top institutions including Citi and RBC Capital Markets. She's also a development board member and alumni of the social mobility charity upReach, one that really hits close to home for me and Naman. Chloe was the first in her family to go to university, studied history at the University of Glasgow, and grew up in Morecambe in Lancashire. Alongside her role in market, she's a passionate advocate for social mobility, access, and gender equality within financial services. So in this episode, we're going to try and cover all of that and more. We're going to talk about her journey into trading, the realities of working on a markets desk. It isn't just what you see in cinema, navigating the industry without a traditional background, and what needs to change to make finance genuinely more accessible. This feels like an episode that's really going to hit close to home for me and Naman, but also for our audience, regular listeners and new ones as well. So without further ado, I'm very excited to welcome Chloe onto the show. Chloe, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. Thanks so much for having me on the show. Super excited for how this conversation is going to go today.
Amazing, as are we. And yeah, I remember when Naman had that first briefing call with yourself, I was like, I'm very excited to finally have Chloe on the show. I mean, yeah, as Naman said, you're very active on LinkedIn, so I think a lot of students know about you. So to dive deep into your journey is something we're very excited for. Naman, I'm going to steal the kick-off question, if that's all right. That's how excited I am. I know you normally kick off. So that for our regular listeners, we know that the first section is normally talking about growing up, education, and kind of early direction in your career, not just in finance. So I want to take you back to the beginning, Chloe, if I may. So what was it like growing up in Morecambe, and what were your early perception of university and careers like?
Yeah, so just to kind of set the scene, Morecambe's a small seaside town in the northwest of England. Think of it as kind of like Blackpool's little sister, almost. Not so much going on, bit run down, but beautiful scenery, very close to the Lake District, so lots of walking that can be done. So yeah, growing up there, it's not really close to any big cities. Closest cities, well, if you can call it a big city, is Lancaster, but it's actually more of a town, which is where I went to school. And from a very young age, my parents instilled in me that I should go to university. So neither of my parents went to university. My mum was very, very forceful on that being my path in life, because she very much wanted me to go on to have a career and have enough money to make me comfortable. Because when I was growing up, my parents struggled quite a bit. My mum held multiple jobs at the same time. She was a butcher for around 25 years. She also did admin. She worked at our local college teaching people how to use computers. And then my dad was a window fitter. So I didn't really grow up around kind of corporate careers at all. Didn't know really anyone in finance. So my mum thought that university would be the way out of Morecambe and a way onto a career that would really let me excel in life. So she kind of instilled in me that that I needed to go to our local grammar school, which was a state school. So I think when I was at primary school, my mum would ask me, "Oh, what school do you want to go to?" And I always like, "Oh, the school where the clever girls go." So she was very much that education was a way out for me. So I ended up getting into the grammar school by passing the 11 plus. And I'd say again that school was where I really realised a bit more that social mobility was really going to be a big part of my life. There's quite a lot of people there from all over Lancashire because it was one of the top state schools in the area, um, who really had a different lifestyle growing up to them what I had. So that's kind of how I started thinking, okay, if I want to do well and excel in life, university, and I need to get out of Morecambe, which is sad, really, because you'd want to think that there would be plenty of opportunities in my hometown for me to stay close to my family and do that there. But it just wasn't the case.
Yeah, 100%. And we kind of see that like with the city we grew up with. So me and Ali, we're from the same city. We've known each other since year eight, and like it's weird because it's a fairly decently sized city. We've got London so close to us. It's like the pull is insane, especially if you want to work in finance. So that is interesting. And I guess a follow-on question would be: so you went through grammar school, you've done your A levels, then you started looking at university, and at uni you initially studied maths, and then you changed to history. So talk to us about that story then.
Yeah, so when I was choosing universities, I wanted to come to London. Um, that was my first choice. I wanted to go to UCL, and as you said, I did well. When I was at Glasgow, I did maths and history. So I very much, whilst I was doing my A levels, did a mix of like arts and sciences. So I stupidly did 5 AS levels. So I did maths, further maths, history, chemistry, and biology. And I overextended myself. I didn't do very well at my AS levels. I dropped biology and further maths when it came to my A levels, to try and balance it up a bit and regain the grades that I'd lost. Um, but within that time frame, it also meant that when I was applying for my universities, I got rejected from my top choices, which were UCL to do liberal arts and sciences, and also the University of Edinburgh. I chose a mixture of Scottish unis and universities that did liberal arts and sciences program because I knew I had a split kind of direction. I wanted to do history and archaeology and social sciences, but I also wanted to do maths because I like getting right answers. So that was kind of the first hint of failure that I had, really, getting rejected, because I thought, okay, London's where I can kind of make a living. That's where the opportunities are. Um, but then I ended up going to the University of Glasgow, which I always say everything happens for a reason. And I think going to London at that time would have been very difficult for me, because I wouldn't have had the money to exist there at that time as a student. And I think it can be quite an isolating city when that's the case as well, especially as a university student. So I think Glasgow was the perfect place in the middle. It was a city. It still kind of felt a bit more smaller, and I could walk around it. And I met some amazing people. Lots of whom still really good friends today. And I went there to do maths, like you said. Now Scottish uni is a bit different because you can do 3 subjects in your first 2 years. So the first 2 years I did maths, history, and archaeology, which is a bit of a weird combination. And then I soon realised that maths at university wasn't like maths at school. I didn't just have to get the right answers. I had to write out all my workings and do proofs, and it was getting a bit more um, like philosophy for me, and it didn't really give me that satisfaction that it did when I was at school, which I think hints towards why I'm a trader now, because I like getting things right and I like quick answers and moving on to the next thing. I've got a short attention span. So yeah, after 2 years, I switched to history. I've come out of Glasgow Uni with a Masters of Arts in History. Um, but during that period of time, I managed to snag an internship in sales and trading. So yeah.
Yeah. No, amazing. And we're going to come on to how you actually broke that internship and how you actually broke into the market, because it is easier said than done, as I'm sure you know. And the job market right now, especially for people who are graduating or graduated, it is quite tough. But that university decision to move away, would you change anything about that decision? Would you kind of go back and maybe change what degree you did, or are you firm in your belief that is one of the best things that happened in your kind of ongoing career journey? Especially because it was a big change, but also, as you mentioned, the subjects, and I appreciate your transparency about the grades as well. I mean, I didn't have the best grades in A levels, but I decided not to retake. But the kind of stigma is you need good grades or the best grades to succeed in finance. But I've never been academically minded, so that helps me and a couple of listeners out a lot. But I'm just curious to hear about what that mindset is like, whether you'd go back and change anything.
I wouldn't change anything at all. It's funny, like you say about going to university, it was absolutely terrifying. The day that my parents were driving me up, my mum honestly thought I was going to turn around and go, no, I'm not, I don't want to go. Because fair enough, I was still in the north. We joke that I've gone from one end of the country to the other to get away from home. So I went to Glasgow and then I'm now down in London. But it is quite far and it is intimidating. You're going into a new place and you're meeting people from all over the UK. But I definitely wouldn't change it for the world. And I think going there and changing subjects and realizing, okay, this works for me, this doesn't work for me, and kind of having those hurdles quite early on is only built up my resilience even more. And that's something that's so important for a career in sales and trading as well. Um, so yeah, I think, as I said before, everything happens for a reason. I've learned stuff from every point along my journey, and I just hope that that can help others. But in terms of the grades, this is something that actually I'm quite passionate about because there's a saying, right? And it's that you can't judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree. And because everyone's good at different things, everyone learns in different ways. I think exams are, some people excel in them because that's their style of learning. They like memorizing, they like being under pressure in that kind of conditions, and some people don't. Some people like to be more hands on and learn through doing. It doesn't make them any less intelligent, it doesn't make them any less skillful. I think the UK has a long way to go in terms of education that caters to other types of learning, but also I think recruitment's the same. The recruitments for the banks need to realise that people can be judged and have potential and not through the lenses that they're viewing them. And I think that's shown that now more apprenticeships are coming available in banks. I think there should be more for front office, especially. I remember on my internship, we had to do a presentation around recruitment and how we think we would make it better. And I remember suggesting that they should do apprenticeships because loads of people I know back home, if you taught them how to do this job, could do this job. And that didn't really go down very well with some of my cohort who had spent loads of money to go to university and fought hard to get onto the internship. But it's true. These skills can be taught and you can do that from a young age. You just need the drive and the ambition and the determination and commitment, which I think people from low socioeconomic backgrounds have built in them anyway. So yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I think it's super important that we reframe the lens on how we're recruiting and realize that people have potential in other areas that we aren't really paying attention to.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think it's great that voices like yours, experienced voices like yours are talking and aiding that narrative. And I think it is changing, slowly but surely it is changing. I think you see a lot more people and students talk about apprenticeships and things like that. Because it's unfortunate that when me and Noman were at sixth form, they never talked about apprenticeships. It was all about UCAS and university. And I wish we have to kind of muddle our own way through the apprenticeship market. And, looking back 3 years away now, we could have done so many things better and probably landed one. And probably maybe be in a better position. But obviously, as you said, everything is meant to be, and we believe in that as well. But it is good to see that changing. And can firms do more about that? Probably. But I'd rather see progress than just like major change, because then there'll probably be a group of students that disagree with it. Because there is also those people that go to those amazing universities, and there's like an air of entitlement a little bit as well, where they feel like they deserve a little bit. And we've come across that, and I think hard work is what's valued the most when it comes to this industry. And I'm glad that's still the case, but it's changing a little bit. Would you agree, Naman?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think it's a conversation that we have often. The fact that, I think one of the worst things in life is, the fact that there's wasted talent out there. So, and because of reasons that don't really justify it. So if someone's from like a different background, or like, a different socioeconomic background, and they're someone who's like intelligent and hardworking, but they just don't have that direct access to, like, okay, I need to go to university if to break into these careers, such as banking, finance, or like law. There's so many careers out there, and it's nice to see that there are organizations. Of course, as you said, that firms are slowly changing as well, but there's other organizations that kind of like to help out on that end. And I know we'd pick up the conversation regarding upReach later on in the podcast, but that is something that's really important to be discussed about. But I think to kind of finish off the section now, just one final question would be, so like now looking back, so of course you didn't come from the traditional finance background, but do you think there were parts of your upbringing that kind of helped you and shaped some of your personality, that helped you in your career?
Yeah. I think I mentioned it before, resilience, definitely. Like I said, those failures early on. Because I came across a lot of hurdles in the start of my career when I started my graduate program, definitely as well. The fact that I carried on through those hard times and I'm still here today, 8 years later, as a trader, um, is a testament to my determination, but also my upbringing from my parents, and that kind of self belief that I can do anything I put my mind to. I think it also comes from school. Now, I have mixed views really on single sex schools, but I did go to an all girls school. But that environment was very much like, as a woman, you can do whatever you want. Then going into an environment which was incredibly male dominated was quite a hard shift for me, because then you're face to face with kind of sexism and all the barriers that are in place for women in finance and also in trading. And I think that was quite a hard shift, but I definitely think going to that school shaped me, and helped me power through that as well. Um, but also my parents, they had a massive influence. The reason I'm doing all of this is for them, um, for myself as well, but mainly for them. Sorry, I don't mean to get emotional.
No, not at all.
Uh,
Not at all.
but yeah, the reason I do this and the reason I've gone for this job is because I want to have enough money to look after them. I want to be able to give back. So that's what I do, and I've helped them pay off some of their mortgage. I'm taking them on safari later this year, which will be an amazing experience for us all. Um, so yeah, I think that definitely has shaped me and my career and helped me power on when maybe I thought, is this something I want to be doing? Is this an environment that I want to be in? But yeah.
Yeah. No, amazing, and you've done it. I mean, I think is a great way to finish off the section. Is that you've done it, you've come through it, and as you've said, you've managed to tick some of those boxes. And yeah, there's always more work to be done. I think some people are just, you have a set of goals. There's a quote I think that I heard on Chris Williamson's podcast. I'm going to butcher it now, but it's like you said that the last set of goals were the ones that you're going to make you happy, but then you set another set of goals, right? Mm-hmm. But some people are just built like that, and it's always very interesting to sometimes think, when can you become content with what you've achieved? And we'll get on to stuff like that a bit later on into the show. But we're going to move on to the next section, which is actually breaking into markets without a so-called traditional background, which we'll also talk about. There is a lot to talk about, as I promised. But your path into trading, as you've said, wasn't potentially what people might view as a conventional one. What do you feel were the biggest hurdles that you faced early on? And then we'll go into a little bit about your internship as well later on.
I think one of the main hurdles was probably my self-belief. So when I actually applied for my sales and trading internship, I did that on the basis that I wanted to go into sales. Because that's the only work experience I had was being a waitress. So I'd waitress since I was 14 years old. And I did that all the way through school and through university as well. And so I thought, okay, so what are the transferable skills that I have that apply to this role in banking? And to me, they all lined up with sales. So communication, selling, dealing with people. Um, so going into that internship, I had a belief that I would be suited to a sales role. I didn't really necessarily consider trading. So I think one of the biggest hurdles was actually myself. Um, but I think I say myself, but also it's probably the preconceptions that you have of traders, um, which you would think is like loud, brash men doing trading, because that's what you see represented in the media, right? Um, so that was a hurdle, I think, going in there, and then also going onto a trading floor and seeing a very limited number of female traders as well, um, and senior ones at that. So having like limited role models to model yourself on, that was quite a big hurdle. But also being in an environment that is super high pressure, but also very competitive. Um, like I think I'm an idealist in the fact that I wish that everyone would get along and think, okay, we're all working for the same bank, we all want the same outcome here. But that's not necessarily what happens in reality, unfortunately. Um, so yeah, I think that they're probably the biggest hurdles when I first started. I think that goes back to what we said about imposter syndrome. I think we'll talk about a bit more later. I think getting over that and realizing, no, actually, I'm really good at this job. Um, like it doesn't really matter what anyone else says around me, as long as I'm hitting my targets and I'm doing well. Then
Yeah.
that's all that really counts.
No, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned competition there to just jump in, Demand. Sorry to cut you off before you ask your question. Um, when it comes to, I'm going very blessed to have been able to. I'm breaking into sales after I graduate and to land an entry level job, and
Mhm.
that's what I'm worried about the most, which is the competition side of things. Because I am also an idealist when it comes to that side of things, where I think everyone's gonna get along and I think that is the case, but also that everyone's got their KPIs, everyone's got their goals and targets that they've got to meet, and how that translates to getting on with each other. That is
Mm.
something I'm looking forward to, but also a bit sort of apprehensive a little bit about. And I'm glad you mentioned that. I think in a sales role or in like a trading role, just anything on that side of the industry, I think that what you have sort of misconceptions about, which we'll talk about, is for me watching films that are male dominated, that are very sort of high pressure. It gets in your head a little bit about you've just got to attack it. But I think that isn't the case, and we've spoken to a few salespeople on the show before, and they said that everyone thinks it's that, but it isn't. Would you say that that's kind of just a brief question? Would you say that that's kind of translated to trading as well, where there is competition, but people can still get along, or do you think it's a bit on the other side of stuff?
Oh, well, yeah, you get a bit of both, right? So I've seen I've seen both, but I have made fantastic friends through the 8 years. Some I worked directly alongside, and some just from all over areas of the business. Um, but as I say, there's everywhere. Um,
Yeah,
so there's always going to be people that you'd like to
yeah,
think that, especially as a junior, that people have your best interest at heart. But like in life, it just, like I say, sometimes there's going to be people that you don't get along with, or they don't like you as a person, or don't agree with the way that you function. So I think it's so important to have the support of your peers. And when you do internships, when you do graduate programs, it's so important to make lasting connections with those people on your cohort, because they're going through all the same emotions that you are. They're going through the same experience. They're a good sounding board, but also you don't know where they're going to be in a few years' time. People from my internship and my graduate program, I'm still friends with now, or still connected with now. They now work at so many different firms all over the city. So I think peers, you should really make an effort to get along with them, and realize that you are all in the same boat and that you can help each other. I think your generation is definitely seems to be more camaraderie there, um, and I think there needs to be, and it depends on the culture of the bank, right, as well, and the way that they structure their programs. Some of them make them more competitive, um, just by nature of how the programs are structured, in terms of like headcount and spaces. But I'd just be mindful to remember, like, everyone's a human being. Everyone's there, like, trying to get a job as well. Um, it doesn't help to like be nice. Just be nice to people. Help people where you can. It's good karma. It'll come back later down the line. That's what I think anyway.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's one of the reasons why firms they look at experience. When they look at your experiences, they see, okay, has is there any, like, has this individual worked with others before? Because it
Exactly.
may seem like,
Teamwork.
like, yes, yes, because it may seem like a buzzword, right? Teamwork, um, like being a team player, whatnot. But it's something that's actually needed in these internships.
Yeah, you could be
So
the best trader in the world, but if you can't work with anyone else, if you're then what use are you really to a bank? Because you're just making everyone's life difficult and your manager's life difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also another thing you said before we move on with the conversation, like in your earlier response, was when you spoke about how you said that you did waitressing from 14 up to, like, what was it, up to university, and a lot of people would literally go like, okay, they have the same amount of experiences as you, but they don't count that as a real experience. They think that if
Mm.
you're applying to finance or you're applying to your spring weeks, summer internships, the experience only means, like your local accounting firm, or like a nice internship at some local finance firm, which could be, I don't know, anything. So I think that's one important thing that our viewers and listeners would really appreciate to hear about, because it's something that really demystifies it, in a sense that, like, you can pivot the experiences you already have, like whether that be a part-time job at ASD or something. So that's really interesting to hear. But I'm going to ramble on for too long. So moving on to the next question. Now, you worked out two of the most prominent names on the street. So what did these roles teach you about markets? But then I guess more yourself as well.
Yeah, so yeah, RBC is quite a bit of a smaller mid-tier bank. I think that was a fantastic place to start my journey. I think it kind of warmed me in because RBC's culture is really, really good. They really look after juniors and their development, and the repo team that I work with there all really cared about me and my development, and I had the best managers and the best co-workers while I was there. And I was the only female on the team, and I was also the most junior. So they all really looked after me very well and taught me everything they know. So I'm so grateful for that. But yeah, going from a smaller Canadian bank, it was a small trading floor, to then the big American monster that is Citi, was definitely a culture shift. I learned a lot from both of them. I'm glad I started out in a small team where I had access to see everything that was going on within my team. Um, it kind of gave me a more holistic um, outlook about how and how what we do fits into the bigger picture of finance and how a bank works. Repo is a really good place to see how the front office and back office and the whole life cycle of trading works. So that was a really good exposure from early on. And then moving to Citi into a much larger team where everyone had a bit more of a niche, was good as well, because it meant I could hone my specifically like credit repo skills a lot more, and also see how big organizations work and how stuff plays out on a much larger scale. Um, so yeah, I learned a lot from both of them. Um, I think it's so important when you're applying for banks. I know nowadays students are so liberal with their applications. They just apply to every bank because it's kind of a numbers game, which is, it makes sense, right? banks get thousands of applications because it's now a lot easier with AI for you guys to get CVs and cover letters, and just kind of blast them out there and try and get your odds up on getting an interview in a place. But I really think it's important to research into the culture and the working environment of your bank, when you're starting out, because different people are suited to different work environments and styles and cultures. And different banks do have different cultures. Some are a bit more slower, some are more competitive, some have a very aggressive American style, whereas others are quite laissez faire. And different people suit different banks. And that's something that I've found very much in the past few years. And it's just what fits well with you. I think there's a big onus on prestige and names, but I think some of the smaller banks are a good place to start because you get that exposure, and also they won't get as many applicants because people don't know the names. Um, I didn't really know about RBC until when I applied. It seemed to be one of the smaller banks, but there's so many opportunities out there. You just need to do your research.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can testify as kind of mind about it being a numbers game. And I think that's where it has gotten to, but I fully agree with doing the research. I spoke to an ex-recruiter and he said to me that it's better to just do one application that you've really spent time on than 10 that you've just thrown away. Because you're not looking, I mean, if you don't look at the values of a company before you apply, I think you're failing before you start. I think that's the basics. In my second year application cycle for a summer, I did close to 200 applications and it was mental, right? But I did make sure each application was as good as it could be. But I didn't get a sniff until like sort of that December, January time. And disheartening, yes, but to know that you're actually putting the work in and not just throwing them away, I think it lets you know that something will come eventually, and it did. But you're right, it's a quantity and a quality game. And I'm glad you mentioned the culture changes and differences as well. We love RBC as a show, but also individually. We partnered with them late last year. We went to their Birmingham offices and interviewed 3 of their employees, and 100% agreed with the culture. I mean, they seem very, very friendly to like juniors and stuff. But what moments do you feel made you kind of feel that you actually, for yourself personally, not for someone else to recognize that, but what moments made you realize that you actually sort of belonged in the room? And did that differ maybe when you started at RBC to when you started at Citi?
Yeah, I think belonging in the room. I think I still get that now, where I have that feeling like, oh, am I? Should I be here? Do I have enough experience? Do I even know what I'm talking about? But I think it came from outside, um, both my jobs, really, from people. I think people recommending me for jobs, like moving from RBC to City and now City to my new place, which shall remain nameless until I've gone. Um,
Yeah.
but I think realizing that people who you've made connection with over the years are talking about you to other people and recommending you for roles, this past time especially, really, really meant a lot to me and made me realize that, oh, actually, people recognize that I'm good at this and want to see me do well and are actively helping me do that, because there's nothing really in it for these people in doing this. Um, so I think that's that's quite sad to say that, isn't it? That 8 years in, that's the moment where I was like, oh, but no, that I think that's the one big standout. Whereas now I do have a lot more confidence after that. Um, there's been a lot of other moments as well, and I think it's quite hard for me. I think because I do so much outside of my day job in terms of social mobility. I'm very loud on LinkedIn, um, and I promote myself in that way because I want to inflect change to do with social mobility and gender equality in finance. I think there's probably a bit of self-doubt from me that people probably think, oh, like, how has she got all this time to do all this stuff? Like, is she even any good at her job? Or is she actually just really loud and noisy and in your face? And people just know her because of this rather than her actually being good at her job. Um, so I think it's kind of like a double-edged sword doing that stuff, because just because I do all that stuff doesn't mean I'm not any less good at my job. Like, the two aren't mutually exclusive. So I think that's something else that I'm trying to contend with still at the moment. But I think seeing people come up to me at industry events and say, I think it's really good, all this work that you're doing, also makes you feel a lot better.
Yeah. And I agreed. And I'm not trying to compare our journeys, but you'd be surprised to know that it's quite similar to anyone that works for the organisation that we're running. They think that, you know, if you put an article out for the show or help out for an episode or something, especially me and Naman. I mean, Naman, I'll talk for myself on this, but a lot of people think you're doing this because you can't figure anything else out. And it's a shame, right? It's, I mean, finance can be quite gatekeepy, the industry for students, and it can be quite, as I've mentioned before, entitled, etc., etc. But there's good parts as well. But it is a fact that definitely there's been times, oh, he's probably doing this because he hasn't got the grades, which is probably a bit true. but it's also about like kind of, oh, he's probably not doing well at uni, or he's probably like can't land an internship and stuff like that. But I think, as you said beautifully, they're not mutually exclusive. You can do them, and I'm glad you mentioned that. And it's a shame that also carries through into when you actually break into the field as well. But it's a stigma and stereotypes that you have to break down. And it leads me quite nicely onto the final question for this section, which is, when you finally like kind of landed that internship and you felt like you finally broken into financial services. Did it feel, and it's a bit of a weird question, but it's quite general as well, did it feel validating, or did it feel, a bit terrifying?
Well, I think, landing the internship, you say like, oh, I've made it, but really that's a really long interview because I still needed to get
Yeah,
the grad
true.
role.
Yeah.
So I was so excited to get the internship, but then I was like, shit, I actually have to do some work now for a solid 10 weeks
Yeah.
and make a really good impression over that time. So that was really daunting. Um, Getting a graduate role was insane. Um, like, I cried um, a lot because I was like, oh my gosh. And the same thing happened when I got my first bonus. I cried because I'd never seen so much money in my life. When I started out as a graduate, I remember my salary was more than both my parents have ever earned together, ever. And I think just that, like, I was happy, but also it was so overwhelming. Like, it was so emotional being in that position. And I don't think people talk about that much. Like, how, like, yes, it's fantastic and it's really happy, but it's also quite emotionally heavy having that realization, like, oh my gosh. And then also knowing, okay, so what do I do now? What do I do with it? Well, like, um so yeah, I think that was, yeah. And then when you're on the graduate program, like, fair enough, you've got the graduate program, but then you're still interviewing then, really. So when I first started on the graduate program, I was actually on the credit cash trading desk. So I started out there, and then after a year, there was kind of wasn't really space for me on the team anymore. So I interviewed internally for this role on the repo desk where they needed a junior. Um, so then again, I remember that time when they told me there wasn't really room. Like, that was traumatizing for me because I thought, oh my gosh, I've finally got here. I thought I was okay. I thought that this was going to be my career for the rest of my life. I was going to be a credit trader, and then that kind of all fell through. And I remember that being really hard time for me, thinking, okay, I'm going to have to readjust my life plan now, and I'm going to have to learn something new and move into a new area and make new connections and kind of go from scratch again. And I think you get that a few times in your career, but you just learn to deal with it better. And then moving to the repo desk was the best thing that ever happened to me. The repo and securities lending markets are fantastic. It's so friendly. Everyone just wants to help everyone else. I really, really love the market participants and the people that exist in this space. But yeah, I think it's only through the last few years really where I thought, okay, I feel a bit more comfortable now in myself, and I'm now excited. Well, not that I wasn't excited before, but I feel a lot more content in my reality and not as emotionally volatile with it, if that makes sense.
No, it does, and it's as you've talked about, I imagine it's been a journey to get there. But I imagine you've also probably enjoyed your break from it all a little bit as well before
Oh
entering
yeah,
your new role.
3 months off has been a dream.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think even throughout this episode, people normally think, if someone's working at, a large firm at sea, their path is, this linear, they went to like a wealthy background, nice school, they knew everything from the start. They knew since they were 10 years old that they wanted to be a trader. So it's nice to know that, that path is not linear at all, but the fact that people can still, anyone can still, just put the hard work in. Doesn't matter what corner of the UK or even the world, or mainly, well, I guess this conversation mainly applies to the UK, but it doesn't matter which corner you're from. It's just like you can put your work in, and you'll achieve those goals, especially within this sector and how it's changing. But I guess I don't want to break off the conversation that we're having. So I'm going to move on to the next section, and that's more like just talking about your life, or actually on the trading desk. So you mentioned you're on the repo team. So could you just tell us a bit more about that? And then and I guess it's a bit of a loaded question, but people do have like this dramatic idea about trading as well. So just could you give us some insight into repo trading and what's the reality behind it?
Yeah, sure. So I'll explain briefly what a repo is because it's super niche. Until I started on the repo desk, I really didn't really know what it was either. So repo stands for repurchase agreement, and basically what I'm doing, instead of buying and selling bonds like you would do on a cash desk or a credit desk, I am borrowing and lending bonds. It's an interest rate product. So basically, if I the reason that we want to borrow and lend bonds is because short markets exist. So when a trader on a credit desk shorts a bond, they've essentially sold a bond to someone and they don't have that bond. So they basically have an IOU to this person they've sold to. So the way that they actually deliver that bond to the client they've sold to is that they borrow it on repo. That's where I come in on repo. So I will go and borrow the bond. So then that onward sale is then satisfied. Now, that's one part of what we do. We do short covering. The way that I make money as a trader is by borrowing and lending bonds and making money on the spread in between that. Um, so, and specifically, I do that for credit bonds and special credit bonds. So, special means in repo basically when something's trade is hard to borrow or expensive to borrow. So that's the stuff that I'm really interested in. And that basically is when everyone is short in the market and you can't get hold of the bond to borrow, or there's just low supply in the lendable amount. So that's basically what I'm doing day to day. I'm just borrowing or lending bonds. Um, and it's yeah, you don't come across it much. The teams are normally quite small, um, especially in smaller banks and in hedge funds as well. It sometimes can be in the treasury function. Um, but for all intents and purposes, when I've worked in them in banks, I've been front office role and um, very much involved with what's happening on the trading floor. So the trading floor as a place to work is quite hectic. I mean, you have these depictions, so like industry is quite a good example of a trading floor. Um, I'd say it's pretty accurate in the environment in terms of like the layout and how noisy it is as well. Um, it definitely used to be a noisier place. It's kind of drilled down a little bit because now most of the trading is done on IB rather than via phone. But it's still very noisy. It's still a lively place to work, and it is very easy to get distracted because of that. And especially when your office, everyone's coming over, sales and trading are talking all the time, and you need to be good at multitasking, and you need to be good at working in an environment that's not silent, which is very different from most people's experiences up to coming into work, because when you're at university, you're used to working and concentrating in very quiet environments in the library, um, and in other offices, in corporate world, especially like lawyers' offices, they're so silent. Everyone's super concentrating, but you need to be able to concentrate, but with all of this stuff going on around you as well. So that's super important to be able to good at multitask, and also to kind of block out stuff that you don't need to listen to, but then also be aware because potentially there's something that's very interesting to you, or a piece of news that you probably should be aware about. So you need to be switched on. I'd kind of drill that down to, and aware of your surroundings. Um, it's a very open place. Traders sit with around 6 screens. You've probably seen pictures of people just surrounded by screens because they need to monitor so much data and messages that come in. So it's busy, loud, overstimulating, and sometimes it can be a lot. And that's why it's so important to have ways that you can decompress.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I'm glad he talked about that decompression right at the end there, because it is genuinely a question we're going to ask about. But as you said, it's a lot. It's probably one of the most intense. I mean, apart from, I think a lot of people talk about trading floors and air traffic controlling as similar things, because you've got so much data to kind of keep an eye on. Except it's probably a little bit quieter in in an ATC tower. But what I wanted to ask is, you mentioned that you didn't know a lot about credit repo until you actually got on the desk. So what skills do you think matter most on a markets desk beyond that technical knowledge? And also, how much does that technical knowledge actually matter?
Oh, I love this question, because when I started out, I had no technical knowledge, right? I didn't do a finance degree. I didn't do economics. I
Yeah.
had no clue what people were talking about when they're yabbering on about all these acronyms and words which I'd never heard before and couldn't pronounce. I still probably can't pronounce some of them correctly now. But um, yeah, I think you can be taught the technical side, right? Some people will disagree, but I think more important is the other side of things, which is the soft skills. I think you can be taught the technical, you can learn that, you can learn how to do the job. What's very hard to learn is emotional intelligence and communication skills, and all those interpersonal skills that kind of get lumped into what you would think is more applicable to sales. They're so applicable to trading as well. Um, I think we forget, well, some people forget. I know that we talk about quant traders and algos, but most of the time when you're trading, it's another person on the side, right? Especially in my market, which is very OTC. The way that I approach trading, like fair enough, I can read the data and can analyze it from a numbers point of view and a technical point of view, and I understand that side. But also, there's a behavioral side of trading as well. And I think that's super important to understand. I think in your interviews as well, in students, it's very easy for you guys to learn the technical lingo and learn a technical answer to a question just by verbatim spitting it back out from what you've learned and parroting it. But if you don't understand that, then the interviewers know. But if you're able to build up a rapport with the interviewer, I would much rather someone say, "Oh, I don't know what that means," than pretend they do know something. I think willingness to learn and determination and willingness to put in the effort to get that technical bar, like level of yourself a bit higher, is definitely like important. Um, so I don't think you need to have an interest in learning the technical, and obviously when you're interviewing at banks, they will require that from you. I think the way that I view recruitment for our jobs is quite different than most of the big banks function, and they would expect you to have that technical knowledge. But I think as we're going forward, where things get more automated and those manual jobs are taken out and done automatically, then there is going to be more of a focus on the interpersonal side.
One thing I say is that, like, a lot of the times when these firms they're getting like thousands upon thousands of applications, it's like a lot of these individuals, I'd say, from the first or second round interviews, most of them could probably, from a technical perspective, do the job. Like, there could be some gaps in knowledge, but they could probably already do the job. So I guess, but of course, they need to, shortlist and narrow that pool of candidates down to like a smaller number. So they have to look at things beyond your technicals. Which is exactly why focusing on your technicals is important, but it's just like there's a whole different point that people need to be attacking, like by building up experience or whatnot. I know some people are naturally gifted at communication and whatnot, but if you aren't, then that means that you have to throw yourself at different experiences. So that's 100% something that students should be doing. We're moving on towards closing this section, and I think one question that I really wanted to ask was, so we've mentioned that, of course, throughout even your studies, but then mainly your career, there was times of pressure, and then, of course, people think that it's pressure would just stay at work and then that's it. But has there been times that this pressure, from working in a competitive, career, has that pressure followed you home?
Oh yeah, completely, all the time. Um, I'm not very good at compartmentalizing work versus home. So everything that I feel, I'm a very emotional person anyway, does come home, and there has been times where I've found it quite hard because none of my friends from university or home or even my family work in this industry and work in this type of environment. So when I used to go home and kind of vomit everything that had happened in the day and all these problems and all these kind of hardships that I viewed I was going through, um, I think it was hard for them to understand and empathize really because they didn't have any experience of it. Um, and that was quite tough. And I think that's why, going back to what I said about peers, it's so important to have those people who are going through the same thing you're going as. And it's important to make connections on those internships and graduate programs because then you can use those people um, as a support network. And I have like some of my best friends are from internship graduate program, and they have been so instrumental in going through this journey with me and supporting me through that and helping and being a sounding board um and helping me make tough decisions that yeah, I'm really really grateful for those people that have basically grown up with me in my career. um so I think that's important to remember that your peers can be used as a support mechanism as well. But it is hard, especially in trading, when things go wrong, not to take it home. And I have a really supportive partner now who also works in a high pressure environment and corporate. So it's really good just to come home and just kind of be able to speak to them about it. But I think it's also really good to learn to process that by yourself. And I would recommend therapy to everyone. Um, it's but yeah, it's hard not to take it home. I think you need to do things that make you happy outside of work and that you can really switch off. Whether that's exercise or going on walks or um going out to nice restaurants. I think it's very hard to get a good work-life balance in our industry. One of the reasons I chose markets is because the market shuts at 5. So I can have my evenings. I don't mind
Yeah.
waking up early. I don't mind starting work at 7 o'clock as long as I can have my evenings. So having that time after work is super important to me. And I think it's one thing you need to be conscious of when you're applying for jobs and you're looking at jobs in finance. Is work-life balance important to you or not? Because there's no way in hell I could work in investment banking and be working to 3 a.m. in the morning because I need my sleep. So I think the fact that the markets are closed does allow me to have that evening to decompress and have a bit of me time as well. But yeah, it is hard not to take it home. It's a high pressure job. I get very emotionally involved with everything that I do anyway. So for me as a person, it's very hard to separate the two. But everyone's different. Everyone deals with stress in different ways.
Yeah, and it's important you said that because, you know, I think a lot of students, they think that the average individual or every individual in finance is this, you know, stoic person that, you know, as soon as they just work and they just work like a machine and that's it. But I think a lot of people do need a reality check, and I don't think this just applies to, you know, the likes of your IB just because they've got long hours. Every role within finance is like, or if not most roles are, you know, this high pressures. They're like they will take a lot out of you. Of course, they give a lot, but then they take a lot as well. So a lot of people do need to get that reality check and have that in mind before they start working.
Yeah, a perspective I heard on it from a networking evening. I was just speaking to someone. They said that kind of like trading is you get more pressure, but in a shorter amount of
Yeah.
time. Whereas in IB you get a bit less, but it's way longer amounts of time. And I'm with you. I can't do those long hours. But Naman is you know, your intent on those long hours. So fair play to you. Is each to their own. I think that's a great time to move on to our penultimate section, which is a bit about belonging in finance, Chloe. And I think it's been a bit of a theme throughout this episode, which is why we're closing off on it. So you've touched on the answer to this question a little bit, but I want to hone in on it a little bit more, which is how do you navigate environments where you might not have seen many people like you? Because there are students out there that feel exactly like this on a day to day.
Yeah, it is hard sometimes. I think when I first stepped into that environment, I found it very overwhelming, and I found myself kind of shape shifting and conforming to what I thought would work. Um, I dulled my accent down a lot. Um, that's now come back over the past few years because I've now realised I don't need to do that. And then also my partner is from my hometown as well, so he's helped me get my accent back, which has been fantastic. Um, but yeah, you kind of feel the need to conform and fit ideals of what you think would exist in that space that you're working with. And I really struggled with my identity the first few years, definitely. And I think one thing people don't speak about, especially like when you're socially mobile, is having that kind of split between your home life and then also your life now. And you kind of can feel a bit stuck in the middle because I now had this new lifestyle where I was doing things that and going to places that I would never have dreamed of um when I was at home, and socializing with people from very different walks of life to me. And I think it was hard those first few years to know where I fit and how I could fit. And then it took a while for me to feel comfortable in myself and um not really ashamed of myself and my background because it's really hard to say actually that I did feel that um which is horrible. Like it doesn't feel, I'm only being honest because I feel like we need to be about these things. But I did feel that I felt ashamed of where I came from, and how hadn't had experiences like this growing up, which now I've come to terms with. Obviously, like, I don't need to be ashamed. I'm so grateful to my family for all they did for me and helped me progress, and I'm proud to be from Morecambe. I'm proud of where I come from. Um and I think it just shows like how determined I was to build a name for myself. And now, like, I'm very much, this is me, this is who I am, this is how I speak, this is how I act. If you don't like it, then that's on you, not me. I'm good at my job, so there you go. um but yeah, I think it is hard. It is hard, and it's hard to get to that point where you feel comfortable and confident, and it all comes from a place of self-worth, right? um but yeah, I think I now would say that the fact that I am like this and I'm from the north, and like I'm unique, it makes me stand out. There's not that many northerners in the city, and there's not that many female traders, so all my differences are, I would say, like positive. It only is good for me to be like this. So why wouldn't I be myself? Being authentic is more important. Authenticity builds trust. And I think people trust me. And that's why they want to do business with me. So it all works out.
Yeah. No, agreed.
And those are important qualities for a sales trader, to say the least. But I think moving on to the next section, because it kind of directly links on. So, and it kind of revolves around your work with upReach as well. So talking about, the whole idea of just diversity, whether that be gender, class, and how that links into, belonging in finance. So to open up then, I know this has been, we spoke about this throughout the episode, but being both like a female trader and then someone coming from a lower socioeconomic background, that did you feel that additional like pressure early on? Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's almost like a double-edged sword, right? Because not only was I a minority just in existing as a female, but then there was another thing. It's like I think the intersectionality of it all doesn't really get spoken about a lot. I got one good stat for you actually. So Progress Together are a non-profit and they're focused on social mobility and financial services. They did a study and they actually found that men from a higher socioeconomic background are 3.4 times more likely to progress into leadership roles than a woman from a low socioeconomic background in financial services. So I think the pressure's there in terms of an identity sense, which is what we thought before. Like, I'll wear my big hoop earrings to work. And I'll wear them with pride. But I think, yeah, identity hits harder as a working class woman in that kind of environment. It hits hard anyway as a woman. It's almost like you've got two things to think about. Well, a lot more than two things, but two steps that you need to go through to be able to think maybe that you're then acceptable or belong in that space. But yeah, the pressure was there, but the pressure was for myself, but also I felt pressure to do well for my family and also to prove people wrong as well. So maybe it was self-inflicted external pressure, but it still felt like external pressure at the time. But yeah, I think there's a lot of support now for juniors from low income backgrounds to get into finance. There's access is being worked on for juniors. I think what needs to be worked on more is the support that those people get once they're in the building and going up the career ladder. I think that's the next step so that we can fully realise that social mobility is something that we should not only just be looking at access, but we should also be looking at support. Because it can be tricky to then get into that environment and be like, oh my gosh, okay, so what's now? How do I get promotion? How do I exist in this? Like what should I do with my money? Like my financial literacy was abysmal because we never had money growing up. My parents didn't know how to manage like money because they never had enough for savings. So then I was working in finance, but then my finances were an absolute mess. So I think just that kind of thing like gets overlooked. That kind of support gets overlooked. And support as well from a monetary position. When I moved down to London for my internship, but also for my graduate program, I remember asking RBC for a like to have my paycheck early so that I could move down. Because I didn't have any savings. I was a student. I didn't have any money. How the hell was I going to afford to rent somewhere in London? And their answer was, oh, do you not have any friends or family in London you can stay with?
Wow.
So I think it's just more about presumptions and attitudes and support in ways that aren't necessarily taken in. Well, they're not the first thing that you would think of, right? I think Access and these kind of programs that do outreach are great, but there needs to be more thought put behind them in terms of support, first at the start and later down the line.
100%. And it really leads me nicely. It provides a great segue on to my next question, which is, yes, as a community and as people trying to break into the industry, we can understand the importance of diversity and social mobility. But what do you think firms still misunderstand? And you touched on it a little bit, but what do you think firms still misunderstand about widening access to finance? And what should they be doing to fix that?
Oh, I love this question because it's all I talk about when I go into new places and talk to HR. I think number one is everything's so London centric. They're like, yeah, we're doing a social mobility program, but in these schools around London. Like you guys had a bit of a privilege growing up so close to London because you were able to see the city. Like it was within reach, right? You like I think when I was younger, I came down to London maybe like once or twice, maybe. Um, so I think for those regional outreach needs to be more of a concern. And I think we touched on it before or on about like university prestige. Um, when I started out, it was all the same universities on the CVs that I was seeing. Like everyone was from the same universities. Like all the banks just target the same because they there was kind of this notion that these were the ones where the top talent for front office was, which isn't the case. Um, there's so many regional universities where there's people with untapped talent and potential, um, which we're not really digging into. And I think Amplify Me do a very good job. I don't know if you've come across them. So they're
Yeah,
great.
for
So
sure.
they're very much they do trading simulations and they do that all over the UK. They've just held one at Strathclyde in Glasgow, Strathclyde University. So I think like widening who we look at in terms of like university and university caliber, as we say, um, is definitely something that can be done better. And also regional, like I said, regional before. Um, but also, just like I touched on there, the support after. Because it's kind of like, okay, we've got you in the door, we've done this diversity program, there you go, you're done now. Fight for yourself. Um, I think there needs to be more of a support mechanism put in place for juniors coming in from diverse backgrounds, and that really needs to be followed through for the at least a few years. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned Amplify Me. A brilliant organization. We interviewed Anthony Chung on our first season. He was amazing, and one of the inspirations for the show, to be honest. And I'd encourage our listeners to check out Chloe's episode on the Market Maker. A brilliant listen as well. Probably better than ours, to be honest.
Oh, come
No,
on.
but no, Anthony's a brilliant host, though. But Amplify
He
Me
is.
is a brilliant organization, and and I'm definitely I'll always shout about them. And I've probably come across them 3 times, twice in uni, and then once on a spring week as well. And every time it's just been different and amazing. And Aman, I'm going to let you close off this section.
Yeah, and yeah, of course. So, well, it kind of links on. So, of course, with Amplify Me are a great organisation, but there's also upReach. Now, that's coincidentally enough I recently become an associate of upReach as well. So could you just speak more about upReach and what it is and what role does it play for people from different backgrounds or backgrounds like ours?
Yeah, so I would not have got my internship with upReach at all. So upReach are a social mobility charity, and they essentially help students from low socioeconomic backgrounds get into high earning jobs, professional jobs in the city, tech, lawyer, finance, you name it, it's there. So I was an upReach associate way back in 2016. They were quite a smaller charity then, not on the scale that they are now. So much so that I got one-to-one help from their CEO at the time. John Craven, who instantly had worked in sales and trading in banks prior to his role at upReach. So I was really fortunate in the fact that I had help from upReach in that regards, and that was helping with like interview prep, assessment centres, basically helping me with that polish that I lacked, and helping me with awareness and information that I also lacked, because I had no clue what to expect at these interviews and these assessment days. Um, Bank recruiting is quite a laborious process, so you can have multiple interviews on the telephone, and then you go to an assessment center, and before all that you've got to submit a CV and a cover letter, and then also do like 3 tests, so like a maths test, a non-verbal reasoning test, etc., and sometimes situational judgment test. So I was kind of going in blind. They really helped fill in the gaps for me, and I stand by my statement that I said before. I would not have got my internship without them. They are instrumental in my success, and now they've only scaled that and made it bigger and are helping so many more students from across the UK. Um, I think I was one of the first students who was actually outside of the South when I was an associate with them, and I was the first one where we did like Zoom interview prep with. So that was really fun. Um, but now, like, I really try and give back. I sit on their development board. I previously sat on their alumni board as well. And I'm really helping with the direction of the charity in terms of fundraising, and how we get the support that we need so that we can go on to support students across the UK, from backgrounds like mine, to get into careers that they want and to um, pursue the lifestyle that they want as well, but also supporting them while they do that. Um, and like, you guys probably have the same experience in terms of how they've helped you, and how personalized it is, and how much they actually care. And the companies that they partner with, and the exposure that they give you to them, and them to you as well, because it's two-way, right? It's, yeah, it's really commendable what they do, and I cannot thank them enough.
No, amazing. And for our listeners as well, there's a ton of organisations out there. upReach definitely being one of the best, and there'll be links in the description to check them out more, because, as Chloe said, I mean, that's how she got her internship. So it is genuinely nothing to miss. And Naman, as you said, your recent associate at upReach is a game changer, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, there's as Chloe mentioned, there's practice tests. There's so many opportunities for mock interviews, and then of course, like with the recent scaling, they've got these mentorship programs. It's insane. Yeah. Of course, I only got it recently, but like from what I've heard, people have literally, like, because of upReach, secured amazing roles or secured amazing opportunities. So it is definitely, like, if you want your competitive edge in this competitive market, then it is the place you need to be.
Yeah, 100%. And Chloe, I think we've taken up enough of your time, so we're coming on to the final 3 questions of the episode. Now, as Naman said at the top, we ask these questions to every single guest, because we think it wraps up the episode quite nicely, but also gives our guests a chance to reflect a little bit as well. So I'm going to kick off these, Naman, if that's all right. So, Chloe, looking back on your continuing career journey, what would you say you're the most proud of?
So I think what I am the most proud of, there's a few things actually, but it's more of the same ilk. And I think what fills me with the most joy is when I have either had a conversation with a student, um, or been helping mentor them for a period of time. And I did quite a lot of this through COVID, when I had a lot of spare time, where I did like an open inbox on LinkedIn, and kind of help people sort through their problems and their career issues, and trying to get into finance, is then hearing from them years later, to know that they've then gone on to like pursue a career, or they've got a promotion in exactly what they wanted to, and thanking me for that help. And I did like a STEM mentorship program a few years ago for A-level students, and it was for female A-level students. And I think a few months ago, I had one of them reach out and said that they secured a sales and trading internship at a bank. And that really like filled me with absolute joy, and that's what I enjoy doing. I enjoy helping people, showing that I've actually made a difference. I think another one is very much working with internal HR and recruitment and trying to make that more diverse. So introducing upReach to RBC was fantastic. That ended up in a partnership. At RBC helping construct their Women in Trading program with Amplify Me, which was super enjoyable, and has made had a significant influence on quite a lot of young females who went through that program and then have gone on to pursue trading careers as well. And then I think obviously I should say the trading. I should say the trading I'm most proud of. But as I said before, they're not mutually exclusive. I think helping people is where I find most joy. I can do the trading as well. So I
There you
think
go. Best of both worlds.
yeah, exactly. Having people reach out after the Amplify Me podcast was great as well. I feel like having people resonate with my story and be like, "Oh my gosh, I feel the same way. That's exactly how I felt." And seeing you do that means like I can probably do it too. I think helping be a positive role model in trading and for people like me from socioeconomic background and women, that's what really means the most to me.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. It's almost a full circle moment, because I remember at the top you mentioned how you felt that there weren't any. How can you have a role model if there aren't any? And so to become one yourself is an achievement for sure.
And yeah, just being able to give back. I think it's a blessing just even being in that position as well. So yeah, it's just like an experience that can't really be matched. But moving on to the penultimate question of the episode, then. So if you could give yourself one piece of advice at yourself when you were a younger age, one piece of advice, you can choose what age it is. What would you say and why?
I think it will probably be in the first year of my graduate program when I did change jobs, because as I said, it was quite a distressing time for me. And this is a saying that I say quite a lot and have done for years and years. But I definitely needed it more so in that moment and wasn't really processing it. But it's all okay in the end, and if it's not okay, it's not the end. I'm very much a firm believer in everything happens for a reason. I've learned so much over my journey, and that's from the failures and the kind of movements and redirections that have occurred. And I think kind of getting some perspective on that and thinking, okay, it's not actually that bad. Um, we're not saving lives here. Um, it's not the be all and end all. It will work out, and because I have that determination, and because I know that I can do this, and I believe in myself, it's going to be fine, and everything's going to work out.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's brilliant advice, and it's advice that would go a long way for some of the students, and including me and Demand, that are listening and watching. And that leads nicely, and it's bittersweet, but the last question of the episode, which is, we've covered a lot, and obviously you know your journey better than anyone. So what's the biggest takeaway that you hope our listeners and our viewers get from your story?
Perseverance is key, number one.
Yeah.
Resilience is necessary, but also it's okay to take yourself out of environments that you're not comfortable in as well. It's okay to change direction, and it's okay to pivot in your career. But I think as long as you're determined and committed and happy with the way that your life is going, then that's all that really matters. Don't be disheartened by rejections or failures. Like I said, my grades didn't go to plan. I then pivoted into a different role. I've changed firms. There's been lots of changes in my career path and progress to where I am now. And I would say that I've succeeded and I've done pretty well for myself. So yeah, just take the hits as they come and make sure that you learn from them and don't get too bogged down by them.
Yeah, absolutely. Chloe, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you for what's almost 90 minutes now. So apologies for taking up almost or
Okay,
a lot of
don't-
your time, but it's been a really great episode. Naman, anything to add?
Yeah, it's just amazing. I think it's advice that a lot of students need to hear right now. As in, like, you know, it's kind of after an application cycle as well. So it's definitely advice, you know, our viewers and listeners are going to appreciate and are going to take on board 100%. So we appreciate for the long 90 minutes of your time that we've taken up.
I could talk about this all day, so don't worry. I'm here to help. So no, but thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation. It's been great.
No, likewise, and I'll be looking forward to watching this back with a notepad and pen. I think there's a lot of gold has been dropped in the episode. So for our viewers and listeners, thank you so much for watching and listening. And if you enjoyed that episode as much as me and Naman did, then please be sure to drop us a subscription on YouTube if you're watching there, or follow on any of the audio platforms that you're listening to us on. And of course, show us some love and engagement on our social media platforms where we post clips, some bonus content, as well as announcing some of the events where we come to universities and schools to actually talk to you guys and, you know, bring some of these learnings that we've learned on the episodes straight to presentations and events that we run across the UK. But thank you so much for watching and listening as usual, and we'll see you next time for another episode of the Smart Money Show.